Hey there, Laker fans. Welcome to Lakers Detailed. I am your host, Vinay, with my co host, Raj. The Lakers are out of the first round, and all of the first round is officially completed with the Warriors beating the Rockets. Raj, we got a tight game up until the fourth quarter, I would say, midway, 3.5 quarters maybe, until Steph kind of broke the game open after having a rough
Mhm.
game. It is the Buddy Hield Game 7
God.
shootout, shooting barrage game, however you want to conclude it. But Steph was able to kind of close it out in the fourth quarter for the Rockets. And what I thought was a really great series to watch stylistically, two different types of teams, a small ball team like the Lakers attempted to be
Mhm.
versus a team that was supposed to be more physical, more defensive oriented, rebounding oriented. Certainly looked like that team in games 5 and 6, but fell short. Young team, but fell short. And then we got a thriller yesterday not a thriller because it was a blowout, but a thriller in terms of the tension going into the game.
Mhm.
Clippers Nuggets Game 7 in Denver. Tight game in the first quarter. I don't know about you, but it felt like the nerves were on everybody.
Oh, yeah.
Role players, everybody. And, my guy, Russ, shows up, plays every game like it's just a regular season game, does what he does. I thought he changed the energy of that game. I thought he changed the pace of that game. He turned it from like a slow walk it up to that frenetic pace, which sometimes doesn't go his way. And I thought he had a really, really nice moment. Game 7. I saw a lot of the timeline celebrating Russ. I saw him intentionally take that technical foul just so he could
That was
talk
great.
trash to
Mhm.
everybody. I thought it was really, really awesome. I'm really happy for him because, he's gotten a rough take from a lot of folks, especially in the media over in the past games. So past 2 years. So two good games, but the last two Game 7s were concluded. Raj, we're done with the first round,
Yeah.
and the Lakers have not been quiet, my friend. They have been doing stuff. We got a big article from The Athletic about LeBron and his expectations and aspirations. We got obviously after we lost, we got the post game exit pressers. Rob had a lot of stuff to say. JJ had a lot of stuff to say, and then just recently we get the paparazzi catching Luca, JJ, and Rob Pelinka leaving leaving a restaurant
Yeah.
in LA at the end of the night. And the conspiracy theories are abound as to what was happening. But
Yeah.
before we get into all of that, how are you doing, my friend?
Man, Vinay, I did not want this season to end that early. Was shocked that it did. Honestly, I even when the final buzzer came, it was kind of a little bit of a. I was thinking about this because the last 2 years we played Denver. One was obviously after the conference finals. The other one was a first round. But in that series, Vinay, you were down 3-0, right? So kind of a comeback is taken out of the picture. Down 3-1. There's still a little bit of hope. Kind of like how Houston did, able to win Game 6 and then force it to a Game 7 was shocking. We'll get into all that stuff. I'm just interested. We watched 3 pretty intense basketball games. The Cavs Pacer one. It was what it was. That was another. I'm gonna leave the Eastern Conference alone, but 2 super high level games in terms of the Clippers. And in terms of the Clippers, Denver, and then obviously tonight with Warriors Rockets. Did you see anything from these playoffs so far in terms of the victors of how the Lakers should approach the summer, right? Because it's a copycat league. We have a copycat GM, I would say, or that's kind of is going to be watching all this. We have I don't think they were discussing vacation plans last night,
Yeah.
by the way. I'm sure there were some real basketball conversations going, but I'll let you answer first and I'll go mine. Did you see anything these games that you would take into the summer for the Lakers to put in their detailed notes for what to do in the summer?
Yeah, I think one of the key parts of a lot of these series is, and it's a role that I would say is um, probably not quantifiable. Like it's not a
Mm,
role that you can calculate what advanced metric allows you to do that. But if there was a way to describe what this person is, it's possession winners is somebody
mhm,
that is something that I think the Lakers sort of lacked. And possession winning can come in the form of a really great defensive player, a really great rotational defensive player, or it could just be somebody who's excellent at rebounding the basketball on the defensive glass. And I think the Lakers didn't have enough possession winners on the floor consistently. We certainly had guys that we thought were possession winners for us. And I think the teams that have had guys that win possessions for them in whichever form that's necessary, especially on the defensive end, those teams are the ones that have been successful. Obviously, the Minnesota series at late game, you already have great examples of what that looks like, especially on the defensive end for Minnesota. But when you look at even Houston going down 3-1, winning games 5 and 6, your possession winners were Steven Adams. Your possession winners were Tari Eason, Jabari Smith, guys who were crashing the glass, playing defense, Amen Thompson, all those guys, fantastic. But then you go to game 7 and it turns into who's going to be the possession winner there. Obviously, Buddy Hield's going to be the big noise of the big talk of the person, he had 22 or 24 at the half or something like that because he's making a bunch of threes. But who wins those possessions? Draymond played Alper and Şengün straight up. And Şengün shorted in the second half, was shorting every single layup attempt at the rim that he was taking. And he couldn't make anything. That's a possession winner. That no matter what you think of Draymond, he wins you those possessions. He had the game 4 stop on Şengün, like kind of stopping that floater that Şengün took. Jimmy grabs the rebound. That's possession winning basketball. And so if I had to look around the league, I'm looking for guys who, whether it's at the end of the game, whether it's at the beginning of the game, whether it's those stretches where we have, like the dead periods of the game where it's ugly basketball. You just want to win those possessions defensively. We need guys who are going to win those possessions for us. And I think that has to be a priority for the Lakers for sure.
Yeah. I just looking around the league, I feel like our athletic profile is so low compared to all these other teams. They just have a bunch of athletes that they're throwing around. Even Denver, they threw out Peyton Watson, and I thought they just athletically dominated the Clippers. Obviously, the Clippers have, a few players that can be attacked for their motor. I thought Norm Powell struggled. I thought, obviously, James Harden had the perfect James Harden Game 7 because it's very easy.
Yeah.
But what's perfect about it to me, Vinay, it's very easy to look at his box score, and there's some people like, well, he had 12 assists. It's like, man, if you watch that game, none of his assists, it felt like, were really doing anything to penetrate the defense or he's having any impact. It was really just him, moving the ball over. And I thought Denver did, a really nice job kind of taking the belief away from the Clippers. But some athletic profiles got to go up. Another thing is there's just no other team I'm watching that plays 5 or 6 guys. Everyone has 3 or 4 guys that they go to. Cleveland, Indiana, each played 10 guys. And that's, I think, with Garland out with his toe injury. You just got to have more people that you buy into in the playoffs. Even tonight in Game 7 with the Warriors, Steph Curry got multiple rests in this one. Steve Kerr was able to kind of find breaks for him. And you need more than a 6-man rotation, but just that athletic profile, Vinay, I'm watching around the league, and the league's getting bigger. It's getting more physical. 2 bigs is returning, right? And we'll see how that impacts the second round and the third round in terms of how teams go into the summer with. But and I know we'll discuss this, but just having, I think, not just 1 but 2 centers you can rely on, and having some versatility, bunch of zone tonight, right? That in the Houston Warriors game, teams have different looks that they can go to. But it's frustrating. I feel like we should still be freaking alive. I don't feel like we're much far away from these teams that are still rocking and still playing. And frustrating that our season's over. It's frustrating as hell to watch Steph Curry have a scoreless half, and they're
Do
able
you
to.
know, bro? I keep seeing those tweets from like. So let me just say this, because and this is for me not to be like mean. I know I don't mean to be mean, but it's just like the amount of people that keep doing this thing where it's just like you watch another player get bailed out. Let's not just say bailed. Let's just say a role player stepping up right in a game, because he's being left wide open. Like, okay, so Buddy Hield did it in Game 7 today, right, Raj? But if you watch Game 5 and Game 6, there was plenty of opportunities for anyone. Like Podziemski had a ton of open threes that he just bricked. They had a bunch of. Buddy also had open opportunities. So it's like they just didn't make their shots in Game 5 and Game 6, but somebody stepped up in Game 7. So like, but when people do this thing when they're like, oh, I wish X player had, my favorite player had a role player step up so then they don't have to do it. But it's like, all right, dude, like, how often is Buddy Hield going to do that for the Warriors? How often do the Warriors rely on Buddy Hield to do something like that? Like, I understand people in the moment are probably just complaining, so it's not anything to think about. But at the same time, it's like there's a reason why Buddy's bounced around the league as much as he has. Like, he's not a guy who
For
sticks
sure.
anywhere, but you never know. He can have a game that can certainly do that for him. And it's just like, if I had to think about an example of what Buddy Hield did, it would be what, like, if we got that out of our role players in the Minnesota series, it would be the second half of game 3 or game 4. Sorry, game 4
Mhm.
in Minnesota, where Austin hits like 5 threes in the third quarter. Rui's on fire doing all this short roll stuff, but we just couldn't close out the game. And the difference in this game is Houston, or Steph and the Warriors were able to close out the game against, I would say Houston's a worse defensive team than Minnesota
Sure.
is. And so it's just like, you can delineate the difference, but there were times where our players kind of stepped up for us when we needed them to. It's just our stars, I felt like, couldn't close the game out for us offensively and defensively to some degree. So it always just cracks me up when people do that. It's just like, bro, this is not a common thing. Like,
No,
how do you think Warrior fans felt when Lonnie Walker went crazy in game 4
that's a good
for
point.
the Lakers? Yeah,
For
like,
sure.
you know
I'm
what I
sure
mean?
they
Like,
felt even worse than,
yeah,
maybe Houston even feels.
yeah, like,
No, and Buddy Hield went nuts, had 19, in the first half, I believe tonight.
yeah.
Finished with 33 in a playoff game. I guess the question is, how did they get those open looks? And Houston sold out
Oh yeah,
on Steph Curry.
yeah,
We're blitzing every time. We're gonna make you pass it, and credit to Steph. He made the right play, and then once every time he felt, and Steph's done this long enough, and sadly to Houston long enough, that he just knows how to kind of take over. And every time they inched any sort of a threat, he took the basketball. And when
yep,
I'm shooting, I'm taking step backs. Like, you can't guard me. And no, so yeah, the bail stuff is funny in terms of how it's played out. I guess the second part of that is not usually discussed, where Steph also went berserk in the second half. I believe
yeah,
he had 15 in the third or something to close it
yeah,
out and to really close the door. But no, it's frustrating because I feel like Kevon Looney had a huge impact tonight, and that's not
yeah,
Kevon Looney's not some crazy player, but he just fits some conventional style of
yeah,
basketball to where you can match up and play some physicality. And the Lakers just didn't have that, didn't have any able to kind of match the physicality Minnesota was. But yeah, but there's some good basketball that's going on. It's bittersweet. You can kind of enjoy these games now in a different sense because there's no stress. There's no Laker game coming until July 15th when they suit up in Summer League, where
yeah,
it was announced Bronny James will be playing second year Summer League, and
yeah.
we'll see if Dalton Connect decides to if he has any still love for the franchise after not getting any not getting a minute in the playoffs. And kind of yeah, I guess that was my last thing. But I'm watching
Yeah,
these other teams, and like Cleveland, for example, a team I haven't got to watch much of, but they play Max Strus, they play Sam Merrill, they
yeah,
play these guys that aren't incredible two-way
yeah,
players, but they found themselves roles in
yeah,
this 3-point ecosystem. Obviously, the Cavs have two big men that they play at in Mobley and in Allen, but yeah, and I was watching that going, man, Dalton was on our bench, like just sitting there. I would have loved to
yeah. So
use a
that was good. That was
flamethrower
gonna be
that
the
we
first
got.
segue I want to go to. That was gonna be the
Uh,
first segue I want to go to, like, with you, was I think JJ's, the biggest thing that came from JJ's post game, because we were gonna talk. I didn't want to talk about everything in the post game presser because there's just a lot to deconstruct. But the first thing I was gonna ask you is, JJ at the end of that presser basically said there are things that I can improve on as a
mm-hmm.
coach, be better about a coach.
Yeah.
Like, do you think it was an X's and O's thing that he's probably looking at, or is it I should trust more than just these 5 guys on my roster thing? Like,
Yeah,
what do you think that he was probably trying to say with that?
probably both. I think it was
Yeah,
a game management thing for him. Obviously, anytime you're in the fire and your back's against the wall, you never know how anyone's going to react. When they're backed up against a corner, and he reacted in that way, which I was kind of surprised at the amount of JJ is very good in media. I think he's the most media trained coach to
oh yeah, for
ever
sure.
exist. I mean, just the amount of not just commentary, but podcasts just in the modern era. So I was kind of surprised at the amount of, I guess, people were really open and backlash in terms of what he did in the playoffs. But I'm sure some of that is him learning and kind of understanding player relationships and how to bench players and how not to. And we kind of dial it down to timeouts and stuff like that. But I don't know, Vinay. I like playing your guys 24 minutes in the second half was strange. There's a reason it's never happened before. I'm sure that's something he'll learn from. I do think there's there's a basketball philosophy conversation that needs to happen this summer, and I'm hoping that that was the start of it. At I think it was called Craig's, is the restaurant that they were at.
Yeah.
Um, never been to Craig's. I'm not sure I would get into Craig's, but like, but I'm hoping that was kind of the start of that in terms of the basketball philosophy question. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think there's a lot for him to improve on. And JJ feels like a guy who's going to put in the work and do that. I thought he had a really good regular season, and
Yeah.
that was a part that's shocking to me. And I look back because a lot of the stuff he did in the regular season really he abandoned. Like this
Mhm.
guy that Jordan Goodwin was part of the rotation that shows a level of flexibility and malleable like ability of your coach, and from that to go to that to very short leashes with everyone except for obviously the starters. But that's where I'm at. Where are you with I guess JJ's as a coach in terms of what he needs to improve going into next season?
Yeah, so I kind of zoomed out a little bit after the series is over and just kind of thought about like just some of the decisions he made within the series itself. The not so much. Well, part of it was obviously stylistically him committing to saying, you know what, we're gonna give Rudy Gobert 30 and 20 and whatever. We're gonna lose him in game 5 or whatever, game 6, 30 to 20. I thought that was one thing. The other thing I was also kind of thinking about is like his general lack of trustworthiness of players. Like it throughout the season, it looked like he was very trustworthy of Jackson Hayes to play through his mistakes, and then for him to be so short leashed with Jackson Hayes against a team that clearly had a size advantage against us. I know people were saying that Jackson was just unplayable. I understand that people have that position. I'm not arguing against that. I think everybody's allowed to have that position. I disagree with it because I just thought just the utility of having a player who's bigger would help the Lakers to some degree. And
Why do you think he was unplayable to JJ? Just putting your feet in JJ's shoes. Why do you think to him he was unplayable?
I think it was trust. I think he genuinely did not trust Jackson to be able to execute at the level that he wanted him to execute. So like this is not me saying Jackson's not smart enough to do what JJ wants him to do, but I think JJ it's like, you know what my thing is like this is the way I always describe it, right? Like um when you make a mistake, right? Like in life, like if your
Hmm.
parents, when you're a kid, you made a mistake in life, like your parents would always respond to you in different ways, right? Like if you made a small mistake, your parents would be like, Roger made a small mistake. Hey, don't do that again. But this is what you're supposed to be doing. But if you made that same mistake again, like I'm sure like the level of irritation from your parents like rises,
Right.
the annoyance
Increases.
rises a little bit. It's like, Raj, I told you, like, let's not do it again, right? And so I think that was happening throughout the season with Jackson, and JJ was always like, it's okay, it's okay, Jackson, let's be better, let's be better, let's be better. But then once the
Yeah.
playoffs rolled around, it's like, you can't do this. Like it turned into like the Valen for the Gujaratis that know what that word means. It turned into the rolling pin that came across the knuckles. Like, yo, like, and then it came in the form of benching him. Like, and they basically bent. And I think he just had no tolerance for it. I disagreed with it. I'm not saying he should have had. I thought that functionally downsizing to a point where I mean, Jaden McDaniels after game 2 basically said, yeah, they don't have a center. They're not playing a center. I'm just going to go to the rim every single possession. Like that should have been a huge red flag that like they're telling you like what's happening. And then you just mentioned, to finish my point, round off my point, you just mentioned right now, um, Kevon Looney getting minutes in game 7. Like he hasn't played serious minutes for the Warriors. Like he plays spot minutes, but he's been kind of relegated to a situational role player. In game 7, he's getting minutes because Alperen Şengün, Steven Adams, they're openly saying, yeah, we're just going to go get the rebound. We're bigger than them. We're just going to keep attacking them in the paint. So that's Steve Kerr taking at face value, saying, I need to put a bigger guy in there because they really believe that they can do this again 3 games in a row. And it made a difference for them, even if it was a small amount of difference, it was enough for them to help them win the game. So I think that's what it was, dude. I don't think it was anything more than that. I think he just had a very, very low tolerance for that kind of stuff. Jackson's mistakes.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think the fouls, obviously Jackson picks up 2 quick fouls, and like to me, JJ should have expected Jackson to have 2 quick fouls going to the scores table. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like that should be your expectation. But obviously, I think that was the thing that annoyed him in terms of why Jackson couldn't play, and I think that's why he couldn't play Vando either, right? I think both of those guys, I think, would have been super helpful in the series. I mean, I think we did that like preview, and we were like, man, Vando's important. Like we need someone to guard Anthony Edwards, and I thought that played out. Obviously the numbers came out today, and it showed Austin actually was pretty successful in terms of the defense on Ant, and at least the isolation defense. That was obviously countered from a lot of people, but at least from the film, that's what it showed. But I thought Vando would have been
your guy. Or your guy, LA Bound, is fighting the good fight.
Yes, the fight that I would fight, but I don't want my mentions going destroyed. So I let him fight the fight. But no, I thought that really played a part in terms of our physicality. Continued to drain as the series went on. We went long on JJ, but my last one. Is this just part of the fire, you think, Vinay, of a rookie coach? This is kind of just the path that they have to go through. They kind of just have to get burned right now. I was looking around the playoffs. I think Adelman's the only other rookie coach remaining in the playoffs. And he has a team that has been pretty set and winning.
Only non-tenured coach, for sure.
Right. Yes. And his team has been pretty set for a while. At least that core has been there. Obviously, they've added a few pieces, and he's also been with that team for a very long time. He's been the assistant forever. But yeah, JJ's pretty much the only rookie coach that was playing. I think Detroit. No, they had JB Bickerstaff, who was a coach. So I'm trying to think of any other playoff team had a first time head coach. I can't remember.
I mean, but, JB's been a head coach before.
Right. That's what I'm saying. I think JJ was the only one. So I think this is just part of the growth from him, and we'll see. We'll see next season.
Yeah. So the point that I was sort of trying to get at was when I zoomed out on the season, or on the series, I kind of reflected on the season. Obviously, one of the things that I think we've said multiple times is this season felt like three different seasons. You get the season that you start with, then you get D'Lo getting moved or D'Lo getting benched. That's a whole different season because now Max and Austin are elevated, and then you get the actual D'Lo trade that happens. So you have this DFS version of this team, and then during that time you have Anthony Davis going in and out of the lineup due to injury, and then the Luka trade happens, and that's another season all in itself, which is completely different. So when I zoom out on this season and I go back to the start, I thought JJ did a really great job managing all the different aspects of this season and the moving parts that he had. But one of the things that I kind of came to the conclusion of, because I thought about it, because we didn't really do much in the offseason in terms of personnel. We didn't do any free agent moves, honestly. The only two moves that we made this season were the DFS trade, which we waited until December to do, and obviously the Luka trade that caught everybody off guard in February. My thing is, I can actually make the argument that this roster probably wasn't a hand-picked roster by JJ Redick. This wasn't a roster where Rob came into the season and said, hey, what changes would you like us to make? We'll do that before the season starts and give you a chance to grow this team in the vision that you want. And I think he was making the best out of he made the best stew that he could have out of the ingredients that he had. And obviously Luka is a tremendous player. So I don't want to act as if we shouldn't have had higher expectations, at least getting past the first round. But I think when I zoom out, if JJ really was able to kind of handpick the guys that he wanted, and obviously this Luka thing doesn't happen midway through the season, and completely change what this team looks like, I think we would get more trustable results. I don't think you have this situation in the playoffs where he refuses to play his center more than 8 minutes in a game or 6 minutes in a game. I think he would have handpicked guys that he trusted, because he's the one who's evaluating and deciding, do I want this guy to be my starting center or my backup center, that sort of thing. So I think as a whole, to put at least to put my sort of period on this JJ Redick part, I think JJ is it's something I tweeted out earlier. One of the concerns that we've always had is we're never sure. We've always wanted more basketball people in the Lakers organization. We just don't trust. I know I personally don't trust Rob Pelinka's ability to evaluate basketball. That's always been a thing for me. I was a big Jerry West guy. Rest in peace to him.
Sure.
But now that JJ is here, knowing how he talks about basketball, you've asked him questions and he's given us great answers about how he thinks about it. I like the fact that they're going to probably lean on him for basketball evaluation. And I think this coming off season, not a transition to the Rob part. If Rob is actually serious about what he's saying when he says it's a big off season upcoming, like there's things, moving parts that they have to do. I think JJ's impact, and then at that dinner and stuff like that, I hope there's more dinners between both of those guys, is going to be a good thing. I genuinely do think that's going to be a good thing. And we could transition. You can give me your last thoughts on JJ, and we can transition to the Rob part. But how do you feel about that? Do you think that's like a fair way of kind of like looking at JJ's like tenure, his first year as a Laker head coach?
Yeah, I guess part of that, like, just I'm not saying you're doing this, but I've heard this conversation gets kind of skewed in this was a this was a house money year kind of the vibe of that conversation, right?
I've said that
And
for
I
sure.
don't know, and that's the part that I have trouble with, like, that feels very I don't know, reading the result, because I think, like, look at was it 3 weeks ago when they beat OKC on the road? The expectations were where they were at. I mean, they just were, right? And the expectations were not to lose in 5 to the Wolves. Who, again, the Wolves are a good team. I'd argue they didn't play up to their par either. You look at the offense of both of these teams. I thought the Lakers offense absolutely got destroyed. And I think that's a place where JJ is supposed to be the advantage. That's the whole point of hiring him. And hopefully he had a, offensive kind of game plan. Obviously, Luka was put at his doorstep. But, when you find $1 million cash, that's that's not something you complain about. That's something that you're supposed to work with. But no, I think you're right, though. I think there's a lot of stuff where JJ's gonna have a lot of pull on what the roster looks like. This part that I have trouble with, Vinay, is my comparison for him in terms of centers is Anthony Davis and Jackson Hayes. Like, that's the reference. That's my point of reference. So I have no idea if that's what the bar is in terms of what center he would play. I have no idea what the bar of forward he would play over the center. I think when people get pushed with their backs against the wall, you kind of see who they really are. And we haven't discussed this yet, at least on air. We've talked about it offline, but man, the Maxi Kleber, like,
oh dude, yeah, go ahead.
entering the game, that was extremely insightful for me. There was a lot of jokes made about it. I haven't laughed much, but I understand the jokes coming out. That was extremely insightful for me in terms of what JJ is promoting, right? In terms of my guy Christian Koloko couldn't make the team because of, I think, because JJ wouldn't play him, which I still vehemently disagree with. I think it played out exactly how I thought I would, where Alex Len should go nowhere near a basketball court. I don't want Alex Len in crypto, by the way. Just make sure that guy is not playing. And yeah, I mean, Maxi Kleber coming in, stretch 5. A man coming off 3, what was it, since January, however long that's been, has not played a game since then. And he closed that guy was closing our elimination game. It was like, that was so, that's where I think I'm so interested in what the roster build is in terms of what he goes for. But I have my hopes in terms of they go after a big, and Rob Pelinka in the presser, which I thought Vinay was the most aggressive presser I've heard him be.
Yeah,
like in terms
of fresh off the extension, fresh. Yeah, I mean, he should be. He better be. I mean, bro, he's signing on. Raj, okay, hold on, Raj. Hold on. Sidebar. Since we're talking about Raj, okay, I'm not slandering Raj. I'm not slandering Rob. Okay, you got Luka. However much weight of him getting that deal done you want to give him, whatever, that's fine. I'm not going to slander him. He got his Luka, so he's gonna earn some grace for a while.
Victor's right, the history, that's how it works,
bro. We did say this before, but bro, how outrageous is it for a GM to be in his car pulling over to the side of the road and signing autographs, bro? Come on, dude. What
so here's what I'll say. The Luka trade is the reason the attention that it's gotten is exactly that. I mean, you pull something off like that, you're kind of Teflon in what you're able to do. I'm not promoting this behavior. I'm just saying, like, this is kind of that's kind of the deal that you're able to do when you pull something like that off. But I mean, the Lakers exit from this playoffs, I think, like, when the Luka trade happened, we were both on, and our reaction, obviously, our reaction has gotten, pretty far. Shout
Yeah.
out, Brian Windhorst,
Yeah.
bringing that up as well. That was a cool moment. But this kick out of the playoffs was a very much okay, now wake up. Like the
Yeah.
dream ended. Like it's over. Like reality starts now. You got the nice honeymoon of Luka Doncic and the Lakers, and oh, this isn't Dallas anymore. And Luka just woke up out of the first round, in a season. So I think there's a lot of work to do. But then he mentioned centers as that was kind of the dominating
Yes.
force in
That was
in that.
the Knicks trade. That the trade that we canceled was for a center. Was using all our remaining assets. Dalton, not all of them, but our most valuable immediate assets, Dalton in the first, was for Mark Williams, which we then rescinded.
Yeah.
So
So I don't. Yes, I don't want to do players. I just, in terms
yes,
of holistically, uh, how how much do you think they're willing to invest in the center
yes.
position? Like,
So
I think that's interesting
yeah,
coming
so
up.
that I think is the Lakers' number one offseason priority. I think there is two things that happened that we learned in the playoffs. One is that we learned, like you said, insightfully, even with Maxi Kleber, especially with the Maxi Kleber situation, that JJ is going to. He's a 5-out believer. He believes in 5-out basketball. Hunt your mismatch with your best players, or not mismatch, or hunt the ISO with your best players, and all 5 guys have to be able to defend, and you have to be some sort of offensive threat and stuff like that on it. Very clear that that's what JJ believes in. Not necessarily small ball, but 5-out basketball. Okay,
Hmm.
I think that he believes in 5-out basketball, and I think we learned 3 things. Sorry. One is that JJ believes in that. When his back is against the wall, he's going to lean even more into that, whatever that version of 5-out basketball looks like. The second thing is that the concern about protecting Luka defensively is a real thing. No matter whether Luka is in shape or not, there's something that I think Laker fans should be willing to understand. And this is not a knock on Luka. This is a basketball skill. Okay, this is the way I always like to say it. You and I have always talked about rebounding motors. We've talked about defensive IQ. We've talked about how certain things are innate. You can't really teach that sort of thing. Some guys just have it. Some guys just don't. And we've talked about defensive motors. Guys like Vando have a very high defensive motor and have like a high hustle motor. DFS, another guy that has stuff like that. The guy that I always like to joke about, Trey Jameson, he's another guy that's like a high rebounding motor, high I'm going to foul you motor, that sort of thing. There's also a way of saying where Luka might not have that motor, and no matter how athletically better he gets, in shape he gets, he might not have a defensive motor or a high enough defensive motor to be a guy that you can trust to consistently defend for all the minutes that he's on the floor, right? Like you look at guys like Jason Tatum, you could look at guys like I'm trying to think of like guys like Giannis. I'm not saying that they always play defense all the time, but the baseline of defensive motor is much higher than what Luka's is. You could argue even Jokic doesn't have a very high defensive motor sometimes because we've seen him just give up layups at the rim multiple times. He did that against the Clippers. That was an issue, I think, after like game 2 or game 1 or something like that. People were pointing out, and this season, regular season. My thing is, I think if you are willing to acknowledge that, if you're JJ Redick, right? I want to play 5-out basketball. The first thing you have to be willing to acknowledge is that you're the best player on your team might not have a high enough defensive motor to like stop the defense from being compromised if you want to play 5-out basketball. Like that's
Mm.
already an issue to playing 5-out basketball. That your best player, who will often have to guard the best player on the other team if they're the same size, isn't going to have a high enough motor to like consistently stay in front of them. And so like I'm not saying you can't do it for fourth quarters and stuff like that. I think that's the first thing. And the last thing, the third thing I think we learned from this is that no matter how good Luka is, you have to give him optionality. You have to give him the ability to
Yes.
not only kick it out to somebody, but to also be able to throw lobs to other guys. You're not using the full breadth of his passing ability and his offensive ability if you're not giving him the ability um to throw lobs to a teammate or slip passes to a big or kick it out to other guys. And I think the Lakers in the fourth quarter of these games when it turned into ISO ball, Luka had one and one option only, which is you have to go score on your guy. That's it.
Right.
You're not going to be able to pass it to anybody. They're not going to come double team. You just have to score it. And us having not having any other advantage creators on the floor when they don't have the ball in their hands, when Luka has it, was a problem. So I think you have to take those three things. And when you take those three things, your highest offseason priority is a high quality center.
Yeah. So I guess you're making the assumption that if you're playing 5 out, you're not playing a center that can shoot. You're basically playing a forward, right?
You're
It's
basically
kind of the
playing forward,
assumption.
yeah.
Yeah.
Or if it's a center, it has to be. We haven't talked about it specifically. I think the one thing both Luka, the overlapping thing with JJ and Luka when it comes to the centers that they want is that center has to have high mobility. That center has to be able to screen, crash the rim hard. He has to be able to stand in the corner and crash the offensive glass hard. He has to be able to run up and down the floor super hard. He has to be able to like leap out of the dunker spot. I think the mobility of the center is an overlapping skill trait that both of those guys are going to want out of that position. And so if it's a forward, Julius Randle, that's it. That's one. Or if it's a center, Nick Claxton might be another situation.
No, because I think you're right. I think if you canvas the league, the amount of like centers that can protect the rim and shoot threes, it's very low. And those dudes make a lot of money, right? Other than obviously Quentin Post. I don't know. I don't think he was very effective defensively, but he's a spacing out center. Yeah. And I just disagree with the approach. You know what I mean? I feel like I'd rather value defense over, and it's not just what was frustrating about the Minnesota series, Vinay, is not only was our offense having no breath of not just in terms of the passes Luka can make, you remove the rim from the equation. So you basically shrink the floor yourself. You know what I mean? And you are so jump shot reliant. Then on the other end, on defense, the whole point of having a center and having rim protection obviously gets played into the different words, but I think the point of that is you can play different defensive style coverages, right? Most defenses are catered towards taking away the rim and then giving up some type of 3-point shot. That's kind of how defense are kind of catered. But the Lakers had to either blitz Anthony Edwards, put 2 on the ball, or switch. Those are their only coverages. But you can't have DFS in a drop. That doesn't make any sense. His arms don't reach. And you can't funnel. I mean, you could funnel it to LeBron maybe, but I mean, still I think LeBron was awesome defensively for what he was asked to do, at least in that series. But I think we need defensive versatility, right? Yes. You're talking about protecting Luka, and he didn't have a great defensive series. I thought he was better than the national media is kind of criticizing him in terms of. I thought his effort at least was better on some possessions, taking out Game 3, obviously where he was throwing up. But yeah, Vinay, that's the part that's shocking to me is JJ, as much as film as he does, boxing the Lakers into the styles that they were forced to play.
So let me ask you a question. You said something that's interesting that I think a lot of people are hyper fascinated with, which I think now we're seeing pushback from in the playoffs now with certain people. That's a good comment from Ashawn.
Accepted.
Yeah, Ashawn doesn't know how we structured that question, but Raj delivered that question perfectly to JJ. We got exactly the answer we wanted out of him. Anyways, the part that I was going to say is, so you said something about floor spacing 5. Those guys are unicorns, okay? Like, and if you can get one of them,
floor spacing 5s that can also protect the rim.
Protect the rim. Yep. Those guys are unicorns. They're and more often than not, they're extremely expensive to
$30 million up,
and they're very rare to get. Most teams don't want to give up a floor spacing 5 if they can, especially a good one, like if they can defend the rim.
Right,
like you said, the Warriors are trying it with Quentin Post. They didn't really go to him too much, like they went with it. But let me ask you situationally. Let me ask you this question, Raj.
Okay.
Let's say we don't have a floor spacing 5. What if we had a 5 that was really, really good at screening, forcing the switch, and then boxing out his guy so well, sealing and boxing out his guy so well that the team, the opposing team has to send like another guy to come and help crash the glass? Is that guy still as valuable? Or is that, in my opinion, I'll give my answer first. I think that player is just as valuable, even if he's not catching lobs, is just as valuable as a person who's a floor spacing 5 because he wins you possessions. He's getting you extra possessions, even if he's not spacing the floor necessarily for Luka. And I think that is something that we should consider. Is that fair?
Our guy, I think it's 100% fair. I think you said it in a joking manner, but our guy Trey Jameson was getting real minutes, and
Yeah.
I'm not kidding. These were actual minutes and they
Yep.
were important minutes. We had I think we beat the Clippers, Vinay, and if I had this correctly, I think LeBron and Luka sat one of the Clipper games that we blew them out, or one of those, whatever it was. I think Austin went crazy, but Trey Jameson played in one of those games, and just this is the part that's so shocking. JJ understood what his value was. Said, "I know he's a two-way player, but we have no big man, obviously, because
we had nobody at the time. Yeah,
we nobody man. We didn't have Alex N on the roster at the time, thankfully. So Jameson comes in and has an impact. He's creating extra possessions.
Yeah,
I think you did the term the Goon Squad, which means something entirely else now.
Yeah.
I guess so.
Yeah, we're the basketball Goon Squad. Yeah, but yeah,
basketball Goon Squad. And so I think that is extremely helpful. Now, obviously, that wasn't prioritized in terms of what they went into the playoffs with. It's obviously not what JJ likes, but I think my 5, if I had a list of what my 5 needs to do, shooting is almost 4th or 5th.
Yes,
right? In terms of,
I agree. Yeah.
If I'm gonna write down what I want from the center, I need you to protect the rim. I need you to rebound. Like those two are at the top.
Yeah,
top
single
there.
box shot rebounds.
Yeah. My guy Walt mentioned screening, huge part. I thought our screens were awful. I think part of that is we're having wing screen, in terms of they could have been better, but in any case, and then obviously finish at the rim, and then if you can shoot, go ahead. But you know what I mean. It's just I feel like catering the center to the shot, I feel like it's just wrong process here, because you can always go to a forward there. That option is there and it's still effective. That's the part that's going to frustrate me over the summer is people are going to say, small ball doesn't work anymore. It's just not true. It's a very effective look.
Yeah.
It just has to be a look. It can't be your whole.
It has to be more situational as opposed to a standard practice, a standard style of play, I think. I think the wear and tear on the players in general when you play small ball is really, really high. And it takes a lot to avoid breaking down physically when that happens. So I think we're in agreement. I think you're saying also that that center position, and I would argue it's not one center. It has to be more than one. You have to. There's a reason why. Granted, not Blake Lively. I always say Blake Lively, but Derek Lively. Derek Lively was on a rookie scale contract at the time. They went and got a second guy. They went and got Daniel Gafford because they wanted to always have two guys on the floor. And sometimes they played both of them together if they had to against certain teams, if they needed the size or the rebounding. But I think if we're assuming as a team that Braun, Luka, and Austin will be here next year, which I think they will. I think all three of them will. Those other two positions in that starting lineup have to be purely dedicated, goon guys. Honestly, that's the best way I'll describe it. They have to be guys who don't care about the shots they get, have extremely high motors on defense, extremely high motors on rebounding. They don't necessarily have to be shooters, but they definitely need to be guys who can finish possessions, meaning if he throws it to you next to the rim, you have to be able to finish that. I can't have a Vando situation where a layup 2 feet from the rim on a lightly contested layup is a 50-50 chance. I think game 4 or game 5, Vando had a short roll play against Mike Conley, and he wouldn't even attempt to lay up over him. It's bro, you've got 7 inches on this guy, and you won't attempt to lay up on him. It's we can't have that situation happening again. So I would say that that center position has to be the highest priority. And if you can get a second guy, and it doesn't necessarily have to be expensive as maybe your starting center, but if you can get a second guy to do that too as well, at a lower scale, I think that's really important.
So Rob mentioned, because obviously he's not going to give away the details in the press conference, but he was asked pretty closely about the center position, and people try to dig more details into it, and he was very much in the general. There's a lot of centers. There's a lot of centers with different attributes or skills. I'm paraphrasing, but I was looking for. Sorry, that's mean actually to say, but so Golden Knight, our guy says Luka's got to play with a lob threat that plays defense is better than Hayes
for sure.
How important does that center have to be a lob threat? I guess there's centers in the playoffs, Vinay, that are having success that aren't lob threats. We mentioned Quinton Post. We mentioned Kevon Looney, Steven Adams, another center, is having a lot of success. That's not a lob threat at all. The Pacers have one. I'm forgetting his name. Isaiah Jackson, I think. I don't know if he's a
Yeah,
forward
I think he
or
got hurt, but I know who you're talking. They're playing Thomas Bryant right now. I think I want to say.
they both kind of got some minutes, but yes,
Yeah.
Thomas Bryant in that mold as well. Obviously, Miles Turner is a lob threat, doesn't catch as many as you think, but
Mhm.
kind of more of a pick and pocket. But how important is that center to be a lob threat for Luka, or is this more kind of defense oriented?
I would say it doesn't have to be a lob threat specifically. It has to, but he has to be a finishing threat. He has to be a guy who can
Mm,
finish. Like you look at Minnesota and how they use Gobert. They almost they'd never want to give him the ball. Like no player on the
right,
Minnesota team wants to give Gobert the ball. It's almost a grenade if they give it to him because his hands are so awful. Like he gets
right.
stripped all the time and he's just not good with the ball in his hands. But when he does get it and it's not contested, he's finishing those plays. Like if they're lightly contested, for the most part, he's finishing those plays as long as he's not bringing it down. So I'm just saying, like they they have to find a guy who's like rugged in that position, but can finish in tight spaces. Like Looney Looney's probably not the best example, but like you've got to be able to like Steven Adams. Like I'm watching what Steven Adams is doing for Houston. He's not some super great offensive threat, but if you give it to him and he's patrolling the baseline, if you slip it to him, he's going to finish that possession. It might not always look pretty, but he's going to. And so
Hmm.
can you find a guy who can finish like Adams and have an impact for us in that defensive center spot? Like I think that would go a very long way for the Lakers in the long run.
Yeah, I think you need someone that can jump out of the air. Like I think we need some type of vertical threat. I guess my way of putting this in is I think LeBron and Luca both are ground bound
Yeah,
like
fair way to
attackers who
putting it.
really
Yeah,
dominate you from so they both kind of kill you from the ground. And having another ground bound attacker, I just again I think if you watch and something that comes off in person as well, Luca Love, like I think that's his favorite pass is the lob. There's something just intrinsic in terms of the energy that he gets from giving a guy a lob pass, a lob dunk. But yeah, I think that guy has to be able to catch a lob. Like this, the most frustrating thing I think for him. You mentioned Vando's finishing around the rim, but even when he lobbed to Vando and Vando's inability to
explode.
jump in time,
Yeah.
catch and finish, just looked
I mean,
like
Raj,
super
even
frustrating.
DFS, like DFS isn't a guy who's flying like he's
Right?
explosive leaper. Like he's not catching lobs and stuff like that. Okay, I mean, if we really want to be fair, Raj, Rui's not a lob threat. Like Rui's
He's
not a
not.
guy who's going to be. We were using him as small ball center for majority of the time because he's the heavyweight. So it's just like you have three guys, three big wings who different offensive ability and capacity and defensive ability and capacity. None of those three guys could catch a lob. Honestly, all of them were like slip past to Rui dunks it, slip past to Vando, lay it up, slip past to DFS. So I agree with you. I do think it needs to be there, but the finishing matters a ton to me, especially if we're getting what we need out of them defensively.
If so, obviously the conversation is dominant. We'll get into the questions because we have some nice questions that we'll get into. But
Yeah,
I think the thing that's dominated is obviously Austin, Luca, and LeBron.
yeah.
If that fourth guy, Vinay, is Rui, that fourth guy is Rui, does that change who the fifth guy needs to be?
So
I think just really, I think
yeah,
DFS is great. I think he's a little too unathletic for just how the playoffs work out in terms of a full-time fifth position there. Rui was great in game 5 and game 4 as
yeah,
well. Rui was awesome down the stretch. I thought he was one of the few that showed off his competitive nature,
absolutely.
spirit.
Yeah,
But I'm not saying he's untouchable or anything like that. I think the Lakers really like Rui, and I think finding trades that fit him will be difficult in terms of getting equal value back from the team. We'll
for
see what
sure.
they go to. But if that fourth guy is Rui, does that change anything for you of the 5, or is still the same kind of get that athletic finisher, or that finisher around the rim that rebounds, that takes rebounds?
I think if the Damn, I wish we hadn't gone so long. Folks, we didn't plan to go like we were trying to keep it under an hour, and I think we got so in depth into the center conversation.
Yeah.
I didn't realize how quickly we got into it. I have maybe a controversial opinion. May or may not be controversial. I don't think Rui can play like
Mm,
as a starter for us. I think if you're going to go with Austin, Braun, and Luka, I think
Mm,
that fourth and fifth position really has to be a dedicated defensive guy. Like,
mm,
I would split like you could bring me let's say Nick Claxton. Everybody wants Nick Claxton. Let's say that the
sure.
Nets, Sean Marks takes a bunch of drugs and says, yeah, you know what, I'll take you guys can have Nick Claxton for Vando, like a poo-poo platter of players. We don't even want
Mm,
Dalton, right? Let's say he just wants to give us Nick Claxton. I don't think Nick Claxton solves the issues for that entire starting lineup. Like
mm,
I don't think JJ doesn't play drop coverage. He's not a dedicated drop coverage guy. He's a guy who will do switches and different stuff. Um, and my controversial opinion is that, or might be controversial opinion is, I think you do have to consider moving Rui. If I had to choose,
mm,
like if the other three have to be there, I think
sure.
you have to consider moving Rui for a guy who's an excellent perimeter defender, so that Austin now
Mm,
becomes your second best perimeter defender in that starting lineup. And
yeah.
then I think you have to go look at a center who kind of fills whatever the needs are for the rest of that group, depending who that perimeter guy is. So I did say the offseason priority number one should be the center. But if I had to say offseason priority number two or 1B, 1A, 1B, I think it has to be a like real dedicated perimeter guy to break up the responsibilities of Luka and LeBron having to sit out at the perimeter as players. Is
Yeah.
that a fair way? I didn't
I,
answer your question specifically,
no,
but
no,
I had
no,
to like say that
no,
part.
you did. I think that's 100% fair. I think the interesting part, I think that guy just in JJ's system and play next to Luca is gonna have to be able to shoot. I
Mm-hmm.
just, and I think like Vando would kind of fit what you're talking about a little bit, right? It's kind of like Vando would be the defensive player within that, bring you that athletic. I'm watching like Aaron Neesmith for the Pacers.
Yeah,
He
yeah.
had an awesome game today. Kind of in that archetype, and those guys are also tough to attain and tough to find and get equal deals for. But I'm with you. I think a center and a, a guy you can throw on. But the tricky part to me, Vinay, is even if you get that guy, all right, if you're switching everything,
Mm-hmm.
how much does that matter? I guess like if you're gonna just allow Luca to be hunted in terms of
Yeah.
in switches, I'm not sure how much the fourth position changes that, right? I mean, like Anthony Edwards was able to kind of pick on Luca whenever he wanted, which I think
Mhm.
to your point is why the center is important. Then you can play other coverages. JJ didn't play a lot of drop, but at the point of reference, he had AD and Jackson Hayes. So Jackson's not a guy you want to drop either. Just his
Yeah.
decision making in that isn't great. He's a better switch big as well. Can protect the rim and somewhat, but yeah, I think that's an interesting way to look at it. I think everyone is pretty much on the table. But
Yeah. Let,
man,
let, let me pose an example. Let me pose a question for you. We've
mm,
discussed this, so this name isn't going to be a surprise to you when you hear it because we've discussed this player.
mm,
Um, I had heard through the grapevine, that the Miami Heat called the Lakers and asked about Rui, and they said, "Would you guys be interested in moving this guy?" And the Lakers at the time said, "No, we're not going to move him. We like Rui."
mm,
Um, but remember, that was before JJ. That was before the playoffs. That was before everything. Before Luca. And Miami said, "Yeah, we kind of like Rui. We like what he brings and whatever it might be. We might be interested in getting him." If Miami comes to you and says in the offseason, we'll trade you Andrew Wiggins, and you send us Rui and enough filler. We don't need picks. We don't want Andrew Wiggins' extra years on his contract. Um, if Miami offers you that, and you conceivably go into the starting lineup, you go into next season with a lineup of Austin, Wiggins, Luca, LeBron, and then whoever the five ends up being.
mm-hmm.
Do you think that functionally helps the defensive floor for the Lakers? Look, I know Rui, fantastic, 50% or whatever ridiculous number from three he was shooting, all that sort of stuff. Wiggins, a guy who's had to be a low volume scorer, like he's not going to get a ton
Mm-hmm.
of shots, but he'll get some shots. Higher athletic profile. Warriors really deployed him really well as a perimeter defender.
Yeah.
Defended Luca really well, I would say, in when they played Dallas. Um, Wiggins also played really well. I want to say against the Celtics when the Warriors won their chip
He was
against
great.
him. If you swap those guys, let's just say it's like, and some nominal player has to go out with Rui to make the salaries match. Doesn't hurt the Lakers at all. Would you consider that?
100%. I think Wiggins would be right up there in terms of someone you would want to get. I have a hard time. I don't know, believe in Miami. Just that deal coming together. I think there would be some complications. Also, again, Wiggins not a perfect player.
I'll tell you the first complication, Raj. Andrew Wiggins is rep by CAA. I don't know if the Lakers have a good relationship with CAA.
Sure,
but they might. But if they don't, then, that's also a little shaky.
Sure.
But
right.
if he wants to, it might be a great opportunity.
And again, Wiggins not the perfect player either, right? There's a reason Golden State was looking for him to be the one that they moved to, and the upgrade that they got with Jimmy Butler, I thought was pretty massive. And the swap was Jimmy for Andrew Wiggins, basically. And it jumped them from a middling playing team to a team that's 21-7 or whatever since they've gotten him. But obviously, Lakers can't be choosers in this type of situation. I think Wiggins would help, and this would be a serious situation for him. I think he's part of the raising the athletic profile. Really good point of attack defender, would fit into that really nicely. I like that swap. Would the Lakers make that swap? I don't know if they want to keep their cap sheet open, but I think that is the type of deal that they should go for.
They should consider.
I guess the part I'm like surrounding on Vinay is I think teams a lot of times they overreact, good or bad, to seasons. In which way? We saw this in 2021. Obviously, Lakers blowing up the team because of injuries. This is a 50-win squad. And so I'm wondering just how much of this team do you still take as a 50-win team versus we just saw them kind of, I guess, eliminated in the playoffs. And so I think Wiggins' deal fits the mold that I would like. Kind of, you're kind of still keeping the wing position there. You're trading wing for wing. You're just changing the archetype. Different type of wing, right? So you're bringing in a more athletic wing there, and I think that fits very, very well. And we'll see how that plays out with the Stars. But I like that deal.
Right. So that's one example I want to give you. I'm doing the examples now because between the Discord and the big chat, somebody's gonna the ideas are gonna come out eventually, and so I just want to mention Wiggins. So I want to give you another example because we're getting close to the hour. And folks, I think we're probably going to have to take this and make a part 2 of the whole offseason priorities, because I didn't expect us to go this deeply into the center position, the positional stuff. So, I mean, hopefully you guys are enjoying it as much as me and Roger are enjoying it. We didn't even get to my favorite part, the conspiracy part of why LeBron wasn't included in that dinner.
Oh, man.
At Craig's, but we'll talk about that at a different time. Here's another name I want to throw at you. Our guy, Ralph Mason, did like this huge list of names of guys that are free agents and might be available trade-wise for the Lakers. Sticking to the idea that, hey, maybe you don't necessarily need a three-point shooting center. You just need a center that even if he gets caught on a switch can be like a mother effer in terms of like he's boxing guys out and sealing guys for easy buckets, creating havoc in that capacity, can switch out on the perimeter if he has to against same size guys, not a guy who can really contain fast guys, but you can trust him in a pinch here and there every now and then. Let's say the Orlando Magic come to you and they say, we're done with Wendell Carter Jr. We've got this other guy, Gogo Bitadze, we've got Jonathan Isaac. We really need shooting. And our team needs shooting to be able to space the floor for Paolo Banchero and for Franz Wagner. You send us Dalton and send us Maxi Kleber. And we'll send you Wendell Carter Jr. Does Wendell Carter Jr. as your starting center give you some, and I don't know how much you've watched him. I've watched him.
Yeah.
I like how he plays. I think he's a real mother effer to deal with in the paint. Do you think a guy like him is somebody who helps the Lakers out in a starting lineup? If you're switching, obviously you're only losing Dalton. Maxi, we never really used, but is he a guy that helps you out?
I think he does. I think at that position, I'd like to be a little bit more athletic. Again, I haven't watched him as
Hmm.
much. I watched a little bit of the playoff series against Boston. I thought he played pretty well, in
Hmm.
that series. I thought
Yeah, he was taking
he
switches
kind of,
out on the perimeter. So yeah,
yeah, very very physical. And Orlando honestly defended as well as you could in that series. Their offense failed them. I'd like a little bit more athletic, prowess at that position.
Mhm.
But Wendell, again, I think Wendell would be a nice fit. I think that's the exact type of deal you would go for. Dalton and Arfers for a center that you believe in. I don't know how much the front office believes in him. And I think Wendell's still young, right? He's like 26, 20.
And don't forget, Raji's a former Dookie,
Oh,
so he's
yes.
got that
Yeah,
connection to JJ.
that that matters too.
Yeah,
And I mean, just recently it felt like they kind of stole that trade with Vucevic, right? They went and got
yeah,
they got Wendell and whatever else for him. But I could see that in the vein. I'm fascinated to see what Rob kind of does. I guess the Duke connection matters now because another Dookie is Mark Williams as
Mark
well. So that's
Williams. Yeah,
another Duke guy. So
yeah.
that fraternity definitely helps. I'm sure. Again, I would like a little bit more of a lob threat
Sure,
within that,
sure.
but
Yeah, I wouldn't say he's an above the rim guy, but he's definitely like a really rugged.
yeah,
I'm going to finish around the rim guy.
you can get a starting center and he's a backup. I think you're cooking. Like if you can get
Mm.
when I don't know how much he makes exactly in terms of
He makes
salary.
like 10 million. He doesn't make
10 million?
much.
Okay, yeah. So if you
Yeah,
can invest that as a backup center, I'd be interested if they do that. But yeah, I like Wendell as well. I think that's a move that I'd be interested in. But yeah, I don't know. It's tough, and they're already going into free agency and centers. Man, I was after diving into actual basketball, we already got to
yeah,
go into salary and stuff like that in terms of
yeah.
trades and all this stuff that we've already got in. But before we get into the questions, just
Yes.
any chance Jackson is back? Because I feel like he lost a lot of money in the playoffs.
Mm.
There
Fair.
was conversation of could he make 10 million a year? I mean,
Yeah,
there was Jackson was,
yeah.
and I think to his
I
credit,
think
he
I
played
think we
really
had
well.
discussed like Jackson like as like well, I think first and foremost we had discussed that Jackson's not a true starting center. Like you're not going to survive a regular season
Sure.
with Jackson as even with how well he was playing. But I thought like if you could get him at like 6 million to 8 million
Hmm.
would be like a reasonable number because it's kind of like a backup center number. Um,
He's not getting that anymore. Like that's, I think that's,
I
I think,
I think I don't think him making like $4 million a year is a crazy number and a crazy unreasonable number. But I will say this: if I think JJ evaluates basketball players the way I think he does, okay, and I think you and I have talked about this, where he doesn't look at them based on their positions, he looks at them based on their skills, their strengths and weaknesses, and then he breaks them down accordingly, and then slots them accordingly. If the Lakers were in a situation where they had to move Jared Vanderbilt for whatever
mm,
reason this offseason, um, and I can come up with a lot of reasons for moving Vando. If there was a team out there that says, "Hey, you know what? We'll take Jared Vanderbilt. We have a guy who has like equal salary, equally long salary that we don't really need or we don't really use, and the Lakers want him. Send us a second round pick with Jared, and we'll swap the salaries." I could certainly see the Lakers trying JJ trying to keep Jackson Hayes available as sort of like that backup spark plug wing four
mm,
position, not a perimeter guy or a backup center, but like that four spot, like the weak side helper. Like when you play lineups where it's like Luca and you just need like a bunch of long defensive guys to make it a nightmare for everybody. Like I could certainly see the Lakers trying to keep him because I mean who's calling for Jackson Hayes? Like who's looking at Jackson Hayes and saying, "Oh, we need to add that guy to our
yeah,
roster right now"? Probably not that many teams at all. So
yeah. I think it's, I don't know. I think it's tough to bring back a guy that you decided wasn't worth anything when the games mattered.
yeah,
I wonder.
yeah.
I wonder how that conversation is, but again, you never know. Lakers could definitely bring him back on a minimum or at $4 million. I
I
doubt
mean,
his
he could be an
values.
82 game player. I don't think they see him as like an unplayable guy. They might think that he's
Sure,
an 82 game player. So like that
sure,
should be that's the way I would kind of see it.
100%.
Yeah.
Shout out. I think there's a Luca stand that has infiltrated. But in terms of the
I do
conversation,
apologize. Yeah, yeah. But
but
yeah, yeah.
but
So it's an interesting, it's a very interesting like way to sort of think about it. So like for the folks listening, like we're gonna jump over to the questions. I think Raj and I were trying to power through like 3 different segments, and it's
Yeah.
very clear that that's never possible with any of our conversations because we get way too in the weeds with it. But I would say, would you say like at least for this first section, like the offseason priority for the Lakers has to be like that center position and what that player specifically looks like skill wise, like that's probably the highest priority for the Lakers, like in terms of like finding the real, like really finding the right guy to fit in with the team. Is that
Yeah.
fair to say that's their biggest priority?
Yeah.
Yeah,
100%. That was a
yeah,
priority. Honestly, right when you got Luka Doncic, I feel like the priority was going to get a center that you can play at least in the playoffs. And I guess my final thing, just closing out this season, I feel like if this conversation needed to be had in March, or not in March, but like right before the deadline, in terms of you either go to the playoffs with Jackson or you have whatever other options. The option can't be I'm playing 5 guys. Like there needed some conversation with the front office. Maybe you go after a buyout guy. Alex Len obviously was not basketball ready at all.
absolutely. Yeah,
So yeah, it's tough because this we just to bring it full circle. We started this whole pod with is it house money, and look, maybe it was to them. It definitely feels like a new era has been stepped in. We won't get into that today, in terms of that, but it does feel like there's a little bit of a shiny new era that's been bestowed. But LeBron is 40, and so you don't know how many more chances you have with him healthy and being able to play at the level he's at, and you never know how the West shakes out going forward, what moves go. There's a star in the East that may be a little bit upset and may shake up the whole world again. We never know. That's sitting in Milwaukee right now. So
yeah. We
well,
haven't
we'll
even gotten
see.
to that part yet. We haven't even gotten
No,
to that yet.
that's
But yeah,
no.
yeah. I
Uh,
I mean I could at least say that part before we jump into the questions. Right now, everybody in the NBA is waiting to see what Giannis is going to do in Milwaukee. Like literally everybody is waiting because half of the league, more than half of the league, is expecting Giannis to ask out of Milwaukee. And if he asks out of Milwaukee, there's going to be a lot of teams that are interested in getting him, that will give up a lot to get him. He is got a very short term extension. He has this year, next year, and then he has a player option. So if he does decide to leave, it's probably in the Bucks' interest to get something back for him, as opposed to getting nothing back for him at all at the end of it. And he's probably built enough equity for that Bucks franchise to be able to for them to send him where he wants to go. But so that's going to be the holdup. So don't be surprised if everything is quiet until that decision gets made.
so I'll be honest. If Rob delivers Luka and Giannis in a 4-month period, go ahead and sign whatever you want to sign. And, there might be a statue waiting as well for the
There
gentleman.
there
If
is a very large
I'll say
obstacle.
keep that,
Yeah, I'll say
keep
that.
that.
I'll say. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay. Anyways, let's jump into the questions that we got from the chat, and we'll power through them really quickly because I do want to get to some of the questions that were tagged, not tagged, the questions that were mentioned um,
Sure.
in the Discord too, in the details clip. So I want to do that too as well. So let's power through the first one here from George in the YouTube chat. One of the folks that's an OG member of the Detailers Club, so we always appreciate you, George. Let me ask Raj: is there someone from South Bay we can take a flyer on that we have a chance to make a big squad? Is Stanley included?
Yeah. I think Stanley makes a lot of sense. He won't play in summer league because he just has too much of a reputation. But I'd love to see him get at least a training camp invite. I think he kind of fits the ethos of what JJ wants to play. I keep banging my head on Koloko. To me, was the best defensive center in the G League last year. I'd love to him to continue the development. I know they like just from the inside, the Lakers are really happy he's in their farm system. And then Quincy is another guy that still really believe in. Quincy Oliveri is a shooter, uh, big time volume 3-point shooter. If you haven't checked him out, he takes like 8 or 9 threes a game in South Bay. Hit him at like a 40% clip for a long stretch. So those are 3 guys. They're kind of the main South Bay guys. Bronny I don't include in South Bay guys because he's on the roster. So, but those are the 3 guys that I'd really kind of focus in on and be excited for in summer league.
Yeah. And so Bashir has a question from Pete from Lakers Film Room, where Pete has said, I guess on one of his pods recently, that he doesn't believe that you can have a good enough defensive 5 defensive starting five around Luka, Braun, and Austin Reeves. And there's obviously an odd one out. But what are our thoughts on that? I'll go first. I think good enough starting five is a that's like graded on a curve. What does good enough starting five mean? Like, is good enough starting five you're blowing teams out by 30 every single game because you have these two defensive guys on the team? Or is good enough starting five you're winning every game by against the really tough teams by single digits and you're beating the bad teams by 10 points a game? You know what I mean? So for me, I think that is a fair thing to say. But I also think.
Can you contend? I guess I think the
Can you
context around
contend
that.
with that? I would say you can contend with those three. But the other two players in that group have to be excellent at their roles, like elite at their roles for it to be successful.
Yeah, I think in a regular season context, it's almost impossible to have an elite defense with those three starting. For sure. LeBron's not going to be the defender. Luka's not, and obviously Austin, as much as he's going to try on defense, just is not going to be, and he's never going to be mistaken for Jaden McDaniels or whatever on defense. I do think there's a playoff defense in there that you can create. That's again when you have Luka and theoretically LeBron and Austin, your offense is supposed to be at a level to where, and also to me, Vinay, like part of this also, basketball is a flow sport. It's not football where everyone gets off the court and now the field, excuse me, people who care about that. Basketball is flow sport where your offense also dictates a lot of your defense. So I thought the Lakers having a bad offense dictated a lot of them having bad defense and vice versa. So yeah, I think there's a way. There's just got to be intentionality to it, and there's got to be versatility to it. Those three have different asks against, which depends on what personnel they're played against. So I wouldn't give up on this 3-man core yet.
Yeah. And then the next question that we have is from JR Medrano from YouTube as well. Can you guys explain why the 5 is so important to the specific Lakers team? So I'll give you a very short version of it. I think we did probably a decent job explaining it a little bit earlier in the pod about the value of that 5. But the simplest way to explain it is you don't have enough perimeter containment to stop guys from getting to the rim. And you need a 5 that can defend the rim because of that. If Austin and Luka are going to be your number 1 and number 2 perimeter containment guys, no matter what their level of effort is, there's going to be a gap against them for them versus the most athletic, prolific offensive players around the league on the perimeter. There's just always going to be that. It has nothing to do with their effort. It's just ability. And so you have to have a 5 defensively to help protect those guys, or at least deter guys from attacking on a regular basis. That's something the Lakers weren't able to do and got kind of exposed against Minnesota. And then on the flip side, the 5 functionally becomes a guy who can deliver excellent screens, which is something that the Lakers, I think Raj pointed out, Lakers weren't getting good screens from their guys because we didn't have a guy who could really set good screens that was on the floor. And he also becomes a guy that wins you possessions, can finish in the paint because he's a true 5, or finishes defensive possessions on the defensive glass. We had game 5, 3 or 4 possessions where we gave up 3 or 4 offensive rebounds on a single possession. Can't have stuff like that happen in the playoffs.
Yeah, 100% echo all that, that you said. It's just, again, keeping it short, it just gives you another option, another look, a level of versatility. And it's what your star player wants. Like Luka Doncic loves to play with a big man that rolls to the rim. I think just gives some optionality that sadly we didn't have.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the last question we have is, Raj, I don't know if you followed college basketball this year, but Duke has a center, 7'2" center by the name of, I'm going to butcher his name, I'm sure. It's like Kaman Maluak. He's a 7'2" center, really big dude.
Did you say he's from Duke? He plays at Duke.
He's a Duke guy, yeah. He's kind of projected to go up and down, but he's not like I think Maryland
Lakers don't have a first this year, by the way.
Yeah, they don't. So Dark Galaxy basically is asking, would you want the Lakers to try to trade up into the top 10 for Malik? He's projected to go top 10, or at least in the lottery for sure. Do you think the Lakers, it doesn't have to be Malawak specifically. if there is an impact guy, if there's a Derek Lively type, let's just say it that way. Let's
Yeah.
say if there's a Derek
Oh,
Lively
good way to
type in
put
the
it.
lottery, should the Lakers try to trade into the lottery to get a Derek Lively type?
I think so. If they believe that guy can play the role, why not?
Mhm.
I think if you can get a guy on that type of contract, go ahead. I have not watched a single second of that guy. Of that, I'm not gonna even try. But like, I haven't even watched a single second. But again, I think wherever you can find it, and you want kind of as many shots at this as you can, in my opinion. So I think, to your point, go bring in 2 centers, however you can, and then Vinay, go get a bunch of young guys centers. And I'm still gonna keep throwing my hat in for Koloko. But if the Lakers believe this other big man, and they've had pretty good, they have a really nice track record with young guys. You mentioned him earlier in the pod, Vinay, but I was thinking like Thomas Bryant is getting playoff minutes, which is
Yeah,
again just nuts. Like you
not
look at the
major,
Lakers,
but like
he's
he's
an
got to play. Cavs got
he's
big, so he's got to play.
yeah, yeah. So the Lakers' track record for young guys is pretty good. Hopefully my guy JHS has a nice year in Philly next season. But
Yeah,
yeah, if they believe that guy can play, then why not go and
yeah,
go make a
absolutely.
move for him.
So the last question, I'm going to take this one from the Discord because
Hmm.
I let the guys know I would ask one of them. So I'm not going to be able to, for the folks that are watching from the Discord, I'm not going to be able to get to all. We're not going to be able to get to all the questions on this right now. But there was a Lakers detailed specific question that I wanted to definitely ask. This question came from Shell in the
Hmm.
Discord, which was, can you touch upon what the season was like for us on Lakers details? So we never really did like I did the whole thank you on Twitter and stuff like that
Hmm.
about just thanking for the support and stuff like that. But what were your? I guess the question is, did you have any expectation for Lakers Detailed as like a YouTube channel? Like, how do you feel about Lakers Detailed? That's sort of the gist of the question that Shell was asking. I'll give you my answer first. Lakers Detailed is quite literally the genesis, the idea behind Lakers Detailed was quite literally me and Raj talk like this all the time about Lakers
Hmm.
basketball. Obviously not on camera, like face to face like this all the time or on camera. We do it in chat form, and it gets very, very detailed. And
Hmm.
at some point, I was just like, maybe we should just
Let's just
record
do
our
it. Yeah.
conversations. And that's why we always say that whenever Raj and I are doing these streams, we're not teaching you anything. Like there's a lot of people out there who do post game shows where they're explaining to you why the Lakers lost or why the Lakers won. And that's not what we're here to do. We're here to talk like friends, like fans of a team that we both like, about what we think about what's happening, whether it's educated or it's nonsensical or if I'm doing conspiracy theories. But we always wanted to be a conversation. And that's what Lakers Details has always been. And the fact that it's grown to this so far in a single season, and us having a little small part in Lakers lore during the Luka trade happening and stuff like that, the way it did,
Yeah.
is very cool for us to be a part of. Not what we were aiming for. We're not aiming for
Hmm.
engagement or followers. We're just aiming for an awesome community that loves basketball the way that we do. So it's been awesome this year. It's not expected, but I'm very grateful, and I'm always going to be grateful for the folks, the community that we're building on this side. I'll hand it off to you,
Yeah.
Raj.
Yeah, same here. It's been cool having a Discord of those people. I need to be more active in it, honestly. But
That's all right.
no, it's super cool. And even I think I've gotten what's it called, seen in person, and people are like, oh man, I know you do the show with Vinay. So it's been pretty awesome and cool. And just we just come up here. We don't really plan any of this, to be honest. Like we just come up and talk basketball.
Yeah,
We're not real.
there's
There's
no
not really an out.
rehearsed dialogue. There's no
There's no
script. Nothing.
outline, nothing. We
Yeah.
just come up and talk, and appreciate people like it and appreciate it. And we appreciate you guys. The growth of this channel has been super cool, and
Yeah.
we have a long summer coming as well. So there's gonna be a lot of stuff to talk about, but super appreciate it, especially the people that have been there from the beginning, and
Yeah.
even ask us where the shows are at and stuff like that. That's just super super cool, and we can't thank everyone enough for
Yeah,
sure.
absolutely. And as we say that, shout out to George for the super chat. His message is thanks for the season, but basketball never stops. Oh, I'm very aware. The guys in the Discord are very active. Like I said, like even since the season's been over, I mean, we didn't even talk about the Athletic article, Raj, the bronze stuff that was in there. I haven't dived into what my conspiracy theories were about that dinner that we've had. So obviously we're gonna have to we'll have to do a part 2, a continuation to this, and touch on some of the other stuff. Luca's saying that he's going to play in the Eurobasket. There's people who are concerned about that, which we should probably discuss too as well at some point. But we're at an hour 20. Raj and I are trying to get these down to being an hour, and we are failing at that repeatedly. But that's just, when you're into a subject, and that's just kind of what happens. And the chat's been alive, and the questions have been great. So we'll schedule some time to do another conversation. Raj, I think for the most part, we're going to keep doing these Sunday live streams. It's a nice cadence to kind of talk about different Lakers stuff that happens throughout the week, or basketball stuff that happens throughout the week. If anything spectacular happens, we can certainly schedule. Well, you and I will certainly schedule something midweek or something like that when it happens. And I'll probably start getting back to doing the shorts, the YouTube shorts, and discussing different stuff. But I had to take a break and decompress my brain from Lakers basketball from this season. So, and watch some other basketball. So folks, hour 20 in, if you joined midway through, or if you ended up joining a little bit later, this will be on YouTube. You guys can watch it there. I'll make sure to get this up on Apple and Spotify. And you guys can pull it back up there if that's the format that you prefer doing it. But we hope that you're having a wonderful week. We hope you had a wonderful weekend. And we hope you have a wonderful week moving forward. So wherever you're listening to this, we hope you're having a wonderful day, wonderful evening. And if nothing else, we'll catch you in the next one. Take it easy.
Peace.